In today's video, we have all the latest UFA and NHL trade rumors from around the league. We're taking a look at the latest in free agency, the latest on Alex DeBrincat, the Calgary Flames, Colorado Avalanche, Pittsburgh Penguins, and Erik Karlsson. Is a deal ever going to be worked out? We'll discuss all the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL, UFA, and trade rumors to take a look at here today. Of course, the market has slowed down here a little bit. There's still lots of trades being worked on, but it's been a few days here, obviously, but almost a week since we've actually had a completed deal. We actually had a handful of deals right around the beginning of free agency, and so the last 4 or 5 days here's kind of been a little slower. We're still getting signings, but we're starting to trickle down on those as well. In the UFA front, Tarasenko and Tomas Tatar are still some of the biggest names out there. Of course, we know Tarasenko's gone through an agent change here in the past couple of days. We don't really know a lot more in that scenario. He's still kind of linked to the same teams that were mentioned here, including Ottawa, Carolina, San Jose, to some degree the Rangers. Not really sure exactly where things are going to go. There was some new information today suggesting that Tomas Tatar might be closing in on a deal with the Winnipeg Jets. We'll have to see where that goes. Obviously, I think Tatar could be a great middle six depth option for a variety of NHL teams. So I'm really surprised he hasn't been signed yet. I thought he would have had more options, to be completely honest. I know in New Jersey, where he was last year, they certainly went a bit of a different direction and made some other player additions to their forward group. So we kind of boxed him out of a chance to re-sign there. But ultimately, he's still a really good productive, responsible two-way player as well. So we'll see where things end up on those front. I know on the D front, Matt Dumba's another name that's still out there. There's some links to San Jose, Arizona, and to some degree Toronto. I know with the Leafs rumored to be moving on from Matt Murray one way or another. There's some speculation that maybe they'll add a guy like Dumba once they get the cap relief from the Murray contract, but we'll have to see. Obviously, they have to sign Samsonov, but we don't know how that's going to work out yet. And it would be nice for them to have a little bit of breathing room going into the season. Of course, they're likely going to be into LTIR with the Jake Muzzin contract here for another season. Next offseason will be a little bit more interesting because that contract will be expiring, and we'll have to see what other decisions they make. Of course, with the Leafs as well, still working on extensions for Matthews and Nylander, and unless we see a significant trade out of the big four group forwards, most likely, if there was one, it would probably be Nylander due to the extension negotiations not going well. That could certainly create a whole new salary cap situation for them moving forward. So we'll see. The UFA market is shrinking down to what's left, but still some interesting names to watch for here in the coming days. As far as Alex DeBrincat goes and the Ottawa Senators, this is still dragging on a lot further than I think a lot of people had thought. Varying degrees of different reporting going on out there, depending on where the information is coming from. I know on the Ottawa media side and post media, Bruce Garriock, he kind of led everybody to believe that a lot of this holdup was due to the DeBrincat contract demands, but certainly according to agent Jeff Jackson, some of the NHL reporters, that's anything but the case at all. Dave Pagnotta, a recent NHL Network hit that was talking about the DeBrincat situation, and he seems to think that the Senators have multiple legit trade offers on the table. They're just trying to decide what to do, and I think to some degree it sounds like the Sens are kind of holding out to see if they can't get a better deal. Obviously, we know Pierre Dorian's in a tough situation after trading for DeBrincat just over 1 year ago. Actually, it was a year ago today, I do believe, and the fact that he doesn't want to sign long-term, it's puts him in an awkward spot, and he's trying to recoup what he can to try to, come as close as he can to breaking even on the situation, which is tough to do when you're moving on a player of this caliber. I do feel that the Senators got DeBrincat for a bargain price last year, and they might, because of that though, they might come close to getting a similar return. Now, of course, they were a long link to Detroit. DeBrincat and his agent here about getting a deal done there and signing long term. Now that Philip Zadina's been officially off the books, his contract's officially terminated after clearing waivers earlier today. That does open up additional cap space for Yzerman and the Red Wings, so that should make things a little easier to sign DeBrincat to a long-term lucrative contract. So now that that's complete, a lot of people were thinking once that happens, maybe we'll see some progress and get a deal done. Maybe today's the day, but yet here we are into the evening now, and it never happened. I know there was a lot of Sens fans kind of freaking out on social media earlier today, thinking a deal was getting close. because upon looking at the NHL website and looking at the NHL team rosters, there was a period of time today where Alex DeBrincat and Erik Brannstrom both were missing off the Senators roster. So that led to a lot of premature fans freaking out on social media, thinking that there was going to be a larger deal in place and that DeBrincat and Brannstrom must be going together to Detroit. Maybe there'd be a bigger return coming back. This kind of created this whole storm of tweets back and forth on Twitter, and it turned out to be absolutely nothing. To be honest, just as a cautionary tale here, if you're looking at the NHL website, especially during the offseason, and you notice a player is missing, do not freak out and think that automatically that the player must be in the process of being traded. I've seen mistakes happen. I don't know, when we're talking about technology, it happens. And I've seen it happen. I can think of at least 3 or 4 times in like the past year, and none of it led to a trade. So I don't know why people stress themselves out and kind of analyze those things so closely in that regard. But ultimately, I think with the Zadina contract being done now and off the books, that will make things easier for the Red Wings. They hold 2 first-round picks next year, and I think that at the end of the day, the Senators are going to have to accept the fact that hopefully getting one of those first-rounders, probably the Boston pick, because it's likely going to be lower, and then a decent roster player, and that's probably what they're going to have to settle for. I think if the Senators can get a guy like whether it be Jonathan Berggren or even a guy like Dominik Kubalik, obviously he's a little bit older but still capable, it may not be ideal, but if you can get a decent pick along with that, and then you can go into free agency because they are linked to Tarasenko. If Tarasenko will legitimately sign for a few years and you can get Kubalik along that's a pretty good replacement. Those 2 guys are certainly combined, you would hope, would give you what DeBrincat will give you and more. Plus, last year, they did not have Josh Norris. He only played a handful of games and was out. The previous year, he was on pace for 40 goals. You put him back in the lineup with a healthy season, he can alone replace what DeBrincat gave you. I think all in all, this team can still be poised to be much better than last year. They've made improvements to goaltending. They've made some improvements on the blue line. The sky is trajectory in the right direction. Everything's going here and upwards. It doesn't mean they're going to be a playoff team. I think they'll have a lot better chance of being one, but they're going to be up against some tough competition. So at the end of the day, this DeBrincat deal, it sounds like there's deals on the table. Yzerman's got everything lined up, waiting for Pierre Dorian to accept it. By the sounds of things, it seems like the GM in Ottawa is what's holding things up here, not anybody else. Now, when it comes to Calgary, as we've talked about off and on for a few days, they have some big names, as we know we've been monitoring here. They traded to Foley pretty quick after the word came out that he wanted to trade. That didn't take too long to come together around the time of the draft. But he's the only pending UFA that's moved, and there hasn't been much word on Backlund or on Elias Lindholm especially. But there has been some more talk around the blue line, and apparently Zadorov's name is out there as well. Now, I would caution Calgary. I mean, they don't have a lot of muscle and toughness on this team, so maybe they want to hang on to him, but at the end of the day, we don't know what his feelings are about re-signing as well. And that's certainly going to play a role here. But the Calgary Flames, a big defenseman, bounced around a little bit in his career, is out there again. Apparently there's some interest from the Florida Panthers. Of course, we know that they're without a couple of key defenders, and Ekblad, who could be out to about Christmas time, and Montour is likely going to miss the first couple months of the year as well. So they are looking for additional help there. The Panthers very well could start the season in LTIR and have to figure it out later on once their defenders are healed up. There has also been some interest from the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. Of course, Brad Treliving knows this player well. He signed him to his current contract. But again, that would involve some cap gymnastics and some other moves on the roster. As we've talked about, there's the Matt Murray contract that needs to go. There's also talk that Treliving is shopping defenseman TJ Brody, or at least considering it. Nick Robertson's name is out there as well, so we'll have to see what they decide to do. But the Flames defenseman Nikita Zadorov is a player of interest from a handful of teams. I still wonder as well about the Colorado Avalanche making a move. If you look at their salary cap situation, of course, they have the Landeskog contract that will be available to put them in LTIR for the season. He's not expected to play all year, and they still don't have a full completed roster, and they have some spots to fill. And the cap space is tightening up, even with what they have at LTIR available to them. There was a lot of talk at the end of the year that Samuel Girard was a prime trade candidate to help improve the forward group. They've been able to do some forward group additions without moving Girard so far, but I do wonder if they might continue to find ways to upgrade if he could still be a player of interest. I know there's no shortage of interest from this player around the league. He's got a good contract. He's still at a fairly young age. He's really quick, good puck mover. Not overly big, but if you put him in the right role, he doesn't, have to play those tough physical minutes like you sometimes see in the third pair, and he can be more of an offensive role, then he will flourish. And I think it's not a scenario that they really want to move him. It just, if everybody you look at that could be a potential trade target to free up some longer-term cap space, with Bowen Byram emerging and McCarr and Taves there, it just, you could use a different dynamic on the blue line, and you don't need 4 defensemen that are, the same, built the same essentially, and he is a little smaller of the bunch as well. So I do wonder if that could still be somebody we might see moved in a, one of those moves you don't see coming for, a fairly prolific forward who can still boost that offense a little bit more. Of course, Pittsburgh is still very much in the mix here as well. Pittsburgh Hockey Now says that if the Pittsburgh Penguins do not successfully trade for Erik Karlsson, that they're likely going to go to Plan B, which is a major downgrade. But if they can't do Karlsson, they want to add a good puck mover back there as well to give some extra support for Chris Letang. That a guy like Matt Grzelcyk in Boston is a player to look for. Of course, Grzelcyk's name has been out there in the rumor mill really since the season ended as a player that the Bruins likely would have to move for cap reasons or just to change up the dynamic and mix in their back end. So certainly, he is a good puck mover, good skater, decent offensively. Nowhere near Erik Karlsson, of course, but if you're looking for somebody who can play power play 2 minutes and second pair, be a good skater back there, then he could fit that bill on the right price. He's not, he's not making too much money. Contract's decent. He's at a decent age. So for, a stopgap measure for a couple of years, makes a lot of sense. So we could see that happen. But of course, the Penguins would prefer to get Karlsson out of San Jose. From what we're hearing right now, the talks are continuing. Certainly looks right now San Jose is willing to retain around 30% was the latest number that I heard out of some NHL insiders. Now, it's likely going to have to take him getting closer to 40 before a deal can be reached, or bring in a third team to take a chunk on as well. But certainly it sounds like the Sharks have multiple trade offers, just like the Sens and the Bricket. It does sound, based on what we're hearing out of Dave Pagnotta, that there is 2 legit trade offers that are kind of being considered on the table. It doesn't mean that they're going to accept either one of them. Those teams believed to be Carolina and Pittsburgh, of course, which comes at no surprise. It's believed, though, that part of what might be holding us up is Pittsburgh would want them to take multiple contracts to free up enough money, which might actually save San Jose from retaining more. But some guys like Marcus Pettersson and Mikael Granlund would be a couple of players that the Penguins would likely want the Sharks to take. Now, that would free up a significant amount of salary cap availability. And, of course, you'd have to throw in a couple of pieces that the Sharks actually like as well. You're looking at probably a couple of future draft picks, maybe a prospect or two, maybe like Samuel Poland, Ty Smith, Owen Pickering. I don't know who they'd have to put in there, but something that the Sharks would be, happy to receive instead of just some bad contracts that aren't going to age well. The Pettersson contract's not quite as bad as Granlund. The Granlund one is the worst of the bunch. But also, I think that the Granlund deal is more bio-friendly than another one like a Jeff Petrie. Now, maybe the Sharks wouldn't take Petrie. I'm not sure, but either way, that's believed to be there. I don't really know what the offer would be from Carolina. Obviously, Carolina has so much on the blue line. I think Brett Pesce would have to be either in the deal or involved in some capacity because there would be no room for it on the blue line. We know contract negotiations haven't gone well, etc. So there's that whole dynamic there. Casey DeSmith's another name to watch in Pittsburgh. If he's not included in the deal, maybe a separate deal. They did sign, multiple goaltenders, including Magnus Hellberg. I don't think they signed him for the purpose of being in the minors. I think the Jerry DeSmith tandem won't be returning. I thought for sure Jerry might not be back. But then after the market opened and, a lot of other goalies got locked up, Jerry stayed in Pittsburgh. And for, long term, a good amount of money, which surprised me. It surprised me a lot. But they've done that. And so I suspect that maybe DeSmith won't be back. And they might save some money that way and bring in Hellberg to be the backup, who would make, almost $1 million less, I think, about thereabouts. So Penguins are going to do this. They're going to be busy. They're pushing to do some big things. They want to rebuild this blue line. They want to rebuild this team and have the Penguins core group of 3. Malcolm and Tank Crosby have another couple of shots at winning before their careers come to an end here, hopefully. And, not too distant future for them, but it's realistically, next 2 or 3 years is probably the opportunity that they have to work with. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's UFA and trade rumors down in the comments. We'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news in the offseason here and all the signings, trades, etc. and all 32 teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.